Hubert,
Filip,
witam Cię w odcinku numer 184 podcastu Hammerzeit.
I would like to welcome you to the 184th episode of the Hammerzeit podcast.
Hubert mówi w obcym języku, bo ten odcinek już za 2 minuty mniej więcej.
Lub 3 lub 5 zaczyna.
No tak, zobaczymy jak nam się tutaj rozgadamy. Będzie całkowicie po angielsku, bo mamy dzisiaj gościa, który mieszka w Kanadzie, Hubert, i on umie się łączyć przez internet z Polską. I jako, że Kanada jest francusko-angielska, to nie mówi H na początku.
Tak, jesteśmy w tym podcaście jesteśmy fanami rozmawiania z ludźmi, którzy są dużo bardziej utalentowani od nas i osiągnęli w życiu dużo więcej.
Tak, kąpiemy się w ich blasku.
Tak, i również dzisiaj taka rozmowa będzie miała miejsce, a pretekstem do tej rozmowy jest coś, co niedawno się pojawiło w telewizyjnych internetach, czyli serial animowany o Star Treku.
W ogóle jakieś gówno, daj pan spokój. Nie dość, że Star Trek...
Gorsze uniwersum, które nie ma żadnego sensu.
Tak, Star Trek Lower Decks sezon 2 zakończył się w październiku, jeśli dobrze pamiętam. 10 odcineczków, w sumie 20. Zaczęliśmy oglądać Lower Decks latem, żeby się przygotować do festiwalu Animator, w którym mieliśmy przyjemność brać udział i tamże mieliśmy okazję gadać z Alexem Pelletier, który jest obecnie animacyjnym dyrektorem przy Star Trek Lower Decks, a wcześniej był po prostu animatorem i tam na festiwalu opowiadał nam dużo różnych fajnych rzeczy, więc uznaliśmy, że skoro mamy kontakt, to trzeba zasięgnąć jęzora.
A wszystko dla was, drodzy słuchacze, żebyście wy też mogli doznać tego. Tak,
i jako, że wierzymy w wasze umiejętności językowe, to ani sekunda tego podcastu nie zostanie przetłumaczona w żaden sposób, więc mamy nadzieję, że akcent Alexa was nie
a także ze względów budżetowych.
A także, bo tak, nie chce nam się, nie mamy czasu. Więc jak będziecie w stanie wszystko zrozumieć, to wyciągniecie z tego mnóstwo fajnych rzeczy, głównie żarty o penisach. Jakoś to jest naturalne, że to schodzi na penisy.
To jest bardzo ciekawe, że właśnie Filip akurat właśnie ten fragment rozmowy zapamiętał. Znaczy, z drugiej strony nie jest takie ciekawe, bo mnie to nie dziwi w ogóle. Nie? Tak, natomiast Filip, zanim przejdziemy jeszcze do tej rozmowy, to tak na szybko nie będziemy omawiać Star Wars.
O, tak, właśnie.
Nie będziemy omawiać Star Trek Lower Decks.
Gwiezdna tak, wyprawa, niższe pokłady.
Tak, nie będziemy ich recenzować tak, jak to recenzujemy inne rzeczy, ale myślę, że na szybko możemy powiedzieć, co o tym sądzimy jednozdaniowo.
Jednozdaniowo sądzimy o tym, że bardzo się cieszę, że sytuacja, rozumiesz, życiowa zmusiła mnie do obejrzenia Lower Decks, bo te 20-kilkuminutowe w porywach do 30 odcineczki to jest bardzo dobry wypełniacz czasu, bo ja mam taką zasadę niepisaną, że jak oglądam seriale, to jeden musi być długi, a jeden musi być krótki. Musi tak być, po prostu nie wiem dlaczego, ale zawsze jak oglądam, to są 2.
Jest tu gdzieś dowcip ukryty dotyczący też naszego podcastu, jest jeden długi, jeden krótki. Ale...
Tak, więc ten krótki, ale to też mi się zgadza, ten krótki to jest Lower Decks w tym wypadku. I obejrzeliśmy sobie cały sezon pierwszy przed festiwalem, bo drugi sezon wystartował w sierpniu już po Animatorze i ta taka bardzo żartobliwa wersja tego uniwersum, bo generalnie to ze Star Trekami nigdy nie mieliśmy jakoś bardzo po drodze. Kinowe filmy współczesne obejrzeliśmy. Ja z dużą przyjemnością oglądałem...
Obejrzeliście?
Uspokój się. Obejrzeliśmy Hubert Discovery na Netflixie, które właśnie zniknęło z Netflixa już na zawsze, bo Paramount będzie mówiło, ej, nasza platforma wystartuje też, może, a może nie, to tam będzie oglądać. Ale Discovery oczywiście z sezonu na sezon trochę gorsze, ale nadal się ogląda. To Lower Decks się pięknie wpisało w to uniwersum, tylko w wersji komediowej, czasem trochę niegrzecznej, chociaż nie aż tak, jak to jest w przypadku South Parku, czy Ricka i Mortiego, o którym też zresztą mówimy przez chwilę.
Czasem nie oszukujmy się tego, mocno głupawej.
Mocno głupawy, ale na przykład jako, że ja jestem, jak to się mówi, jestem cat person, to żart w sezonie drugim, jak pani doktor Tiana prosiła, żeby przywieźć jej totem płodności w kartonie, przy czym okazało się, że totem płodności jest nieważny i karton jest zajebisty, zajebisty, to mówię, to jest bardzo dobry żart. Puentą odcinka było to, że kot się tarza w kartonie. To tego typu akcje są bardzo spoko, więc generalnie nie jest to rzecz wybitna i nawet przeczytałem, że scenariusz jest dużo lepszy niż animacja, ale nie chciałem tego mówić Aleksowi. Nie, ale oceny serial ma dobre, fanom się podoba. Ja, jako że nie jestem Treki, to mogę z czystym sumieniem powiedzieć, że jest spoko, nie jest wysoko, ale nie musimy chyba tego puentować dźwiękiem. To jest moja osobista opinia.
Tak, moja osobista opinia jest z kolei taka, że zaskakująco dobrze się bawiłem oglądając ten serial, biorąc pod uwagę, że ani miłośnikiem uniwersum Star Trekowego nie jestem, a jeśli chodzi o krótkie animacje, to tak częściowo. W każdym razie tak jak na początku, że tak powiem, podszedłem do tego z obowiązku, to gdzieś tak w połowie drugiego sezonu, może pod koniec tego pierwszego sezonu, przepraszam, zacząłem rzeczywiście doceniać to, co oglądam i drugi sezon obejrzałem już z nieskrywaną przyjemnością w całości.
Tak, bo poznałeś postacie, wiedziałeś, czego się spodziewać i oni też poznali postacie, dlatego mogli podkręcić efekty i inne rzeczy.
Dobrze, Filip, ale my tu gadu, a Alex czeka.
A Alex stygnie, tak? Więc rozgrzejmy Alexa. Mili Państwo, Alex Pelletier, Animation Director w firmie, która się nazywa Titmouse, więc jest to śmieszna nazwa. Oni siedzą w Vancouver, Star Trek siedzi w Los Angeles i jakoś ten projekt muszą pchać.
Tak jest. Alex, jeszcze słowem wstępu, taki już totalnie przed rozmową, to oprócz tego, że pracował przy tym serialu, to pracował przy takich rzeczach, które znacie, jak Rick and Morty, a jeśli macie dzieci w wieku jakimkolwiek, to na pewno słyszeliście też o Kapitanie Majtasie.
Tak jest. Mili Państwo, zapraszamy na rozmowę Go.
Angielski.
And right now, we have an intercontinental, super high-speed, high-quality connection with Canada, with Vancouver, with Alex Pelletier, who is an animation director at Titmouse. Hello, Alex.
Hey guys, nice to see you again.
Nice to hear you again, because we've got a chance to talk.
Yeah, we can't see each other.
This time we can't see each other. We got a chance to talk earlier on the Animator Festival, but this time the subject, the main subject of our conversation, I think, will be something that has happened very recently, and by that I mean the second season of Star Trek Lower Decks, for which, as the end credits tell us, you were the animation director and storyboard artist as well.
Yeah, that's right. I did a bit of storyboard at the end of the season. Just a few sequences, not a whole lot, because I needed to start as animation director.
Okay, so before we get into the meat of Star Trek, the first question should be fairly simple, and that is, who is an animation director and how is he or she different from a regular director and a regular animator?
Let's start with just animator. So animator you would get a scene with the characters and all of that, and your role is pretty much to make the acting the same way as an actor would do. As an animation director, I'm helping on a technical level for animators that don't yet have all the experience with the software or like just the animation in general. But also anything that is story beats in term of like, as an animator, they try to do the animation nice and everything, but sometimes they try to overdo it for a sequence that we need to keep really like subtle because like it's really emotional or things like that. So I'm trying to guide the energy level of the episode, the animation quality. So it's more of like guiding the style of the animation as well and things like that. So just to make the animation as good as possible. So usually animation director would be an animator that had a lot of experience, that was doing like pretty good scenes overall like in his career, and then he's just like put in a position where he's helping all the other animators to achieve that kind of level of animation.
But do you animate yourself? Do you get to tweak the knobs?
It's really rare, but I'm animating now, and I did animate, to be honest, like in season 1, I did animate just one scene, and I did that just because I needed to make a tutorial for the rest of my team. And in season 2, I didn't animate anything. I say that, and I didn't animate a full scene. So from beginning to the end, The part I'm involved a lot is in retakes. So whenever we are done with the episode, we get a lot of notes from the supervising director from LA and also from the client, Mike McMahon, and all of the people at Paramount. So we take those notes and then we just reopen all the scenes that need any kind of changes, and that's a part where I'm really involved. I'm doing a lot of that because it's usually getting the last step of quality that was missing in the scene, or sometimes it involves like taking pieces from another scene and bringing them like in some other, like just mix and matching like a few things so that they are consistent throughout the episode. So yeah, that's a part where I'm a bit more involved, and it takes so much time that because of that, and also giving review like notes to my animation team and all of that, I end up rarely having the time to animate.
Okay, so you're a guy who has his team. You used to be a part of the team, the animation team, but still in the hierarchy of the company, you still have someone above you, right? And then there is the managing or supervising, you said, director of the show, and he has the final say.
I think what Philip's trying to ask you is, what's the end game for a guy like you?
Yeah, so above me, there's, well, on my side of, because it's a project that is split between Vancouver and LA. So in Vancouver, we do the animation, the compositing, we do the rigging of the characters, we do also the backgrounds, painting and line. So above me, there's a producer on the Vancouver side. So just to manage everything that is like budget, schedule, and things like that. But then beyond that, everything that is pre-production, that is like storyboard, scripts, design, that's all done in LA. And then in LA, there's the supervising director and the art director that we interact a lot with, just to double check that the information we get is actually working for us in animation. Sometimes we would ask some design to be revised because they are not optimized for animation, or sometime in the storyboard, they always do a revision really quick at the very end of like a delivery for an episode, just to get all the story beat like as good as possible. But sometimes, because there's so many changes at the very end of like the work process for a storyboard, there's a lot of hookups issues that starts to appear, or there's like this drawings were done a bit faster, so then it's hard to tell which character was drawn or something like that. So when that happens, then we do have meetings with them to just clarify some of the parts of the episode, just to make sure that everything's done right and everybody's happy in the end. And then even beyond that, there's Mike, who's the showrunner and main writer of the show. So he, as always, like he gives kind of is called on everything that is like even design, storyboard, like the animation, on every single step of like the process. Mike has a say, and I think it's like he also has a vision for the show, and that's really important for him to have his word on everything, I think.
And as an animation director, do you have like a say when it comes to storylines, character development? Is there something that, or is it just like more of a technical approach on your part? For example, are there any scenes in the lower decks that you could say, hey, that was my idea, I came up with that?
We do sometimes suggest small ideas. It's never nothing big. We can't like change anything that is in terms of a line a character would say or anything like that. That's something that we really trust the writing. The writing on the shows is really, really good. So we don't try to change anything in that sense, but sometimes it's more a visual thing or acting thing or a timing thing. So to give an example, in season 1, so when they were going to meet the Gelrakian, they were going to offer a crystal, but then they opened the box and it's a lug. And then a bit later in the episode, there's the big fight going on, and in the boards, the character was getting Vendome. He was getting a spear in the crotch. But the spear, because they didn't wanted like blood or something, I can't remember what was the reason behind it, but it was a weird spear that had like kind of a round ball, like a pouch at the front. And then when we saw that, it was not matching with the other design of the spears, and then we were like, why would there be just like one different spear for that scene? And then someone in the team suggested just like, oh, what if we use the lug, which is a fertility like totem or whatever? So why don't we throw that in the crotch, which like kind of, I don't know, like throwing a fertility thing in the crotch of a character.
I know,
like,
a good penis joke
funny,
is always good.
Yeah, so we went for that, and then it was a really good suggestion. And so there's little ideas like that we can like suggest, but it's not in terms of like rewriting or anything. There's been other occasions where like we just played with the timing of a scene to add like awkward silence and things like that to just like make moments funnier. So it's more on that level.
But before you worked on Lower Decks, the one show that is, I think, most interesting to our listeners is Rick and Morty. You had the opportunity to animate stuff on season 2 of the show, and it was already an established brand. Rick and Morty became really popular during season 1. And were you a viewer? Did you like the show and then thought, ooh, I can work on that? That's great.
I had friends that worked on season 1, and at the time I didn't know what it was, but they told me about the project, and I was like, okay, I'll look it up. And then as soon as I saw season 1, yeah, I was like super into it. And I was kind of lucky because this show, just in the way they write the show and everything, the creator needed always kind of a break between season because they are involved in so many projects. So it kind of gave me the time to move to Vancouver, and like I've worked for another company. At first I worked for Atomic Cartoon and Pirate Express first, and then I heard they were recruiting for season 2, and then I applied and I got a spot, which I was pretty lucky and happy about. So.
Okay, and what was the hardest or weirdest part to animate on Rick and Morty, and as well on Star Trek? Do you have do you remember a certain scene or a gag that was cool but tricky?
So there's so many. So there's one that was tricky for me to animate. There was like Rick on a paraglider that was just like flying in the sky naked, and then just the change of angle and everything, it needed to be really 3-dimensional kind of in the sky. So that was one that was tricky. And then there was a funny thing about this one where my animation director at the time, we were talking about it because in the design they just put a really tiny I can't remember, I think either he had a really tiny dick or he didn't add a dick at all. And then I did suggest to my animation director to see if we could like get a bigger dick so that it's like waving in the wind. And then we went for it because it was gonna be pixelated anyway. But I was like, we are gonna feel the pixels moving. And then we went for that, and yeah, it was funnier. Like we had a good laugh at the studio. And then there's another scene where Jerry is like shooting a lot of worm Jerry. And then he's getting attacked, and that scene had a lot of characters, and it was a bit complex, but I think it's one of my favorite scenes I did on the show, just, yeah, because it looks so cool.
A crowd is always nice to look at.
Yeah, I really like, it's fun working on scenes like that. It takes you forever, it takes you like a week to do 50 frames or something like that, which is like not manageable for like a whole show. Like you can't do that level of quality for all the scenes. But it's really nice to have the opportunity to work on something like that.
Okay, but let's return to the dick part, because that's a question that we were storing up for later. But I think the occasion came to use it now. So you mentioned that you added a pixelated big dick to one of the characters. Well, in season 2 of Star Trek Lower Decks, there are a couple of nude scenes. Especially the one that stuck with me was the one when they were having all those tests and trials, and one of the tests was that the whole crew lost all their inhibitions, and the ending part of that scene was when Boiler was like spread out on
the floor,
on the floor or somewhere, and showed all of his goods, and I couldn't help but wonder, was it all drawn first and then censored, or did you just skip that part?
Yeah, is he like a Ken doll, or is he real?
So I think for Lower Decks we tried to do something a bit more like, there's a different range compared to Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty can be a bit more graphic, I feel, in that sense. As for Lower Deck, we try to make it just slightly more family friendly. And I would say there's different approach just from talking with people that are in the industry and work a bit all around the world. I feel in Europe or even in Australia, like you can have content that is a bit more crude or like less censored. And then I feel in Canada and in the States, showing like blood or dicks or things like that, you quickly get a rating that would be like a show for adult or something like that. So then
and Lower Decks is 16 plus, I guess, on Amazon. I think.
Yeah, I don't even know what we are like rated as for, but yeah, that's something we try to avoid, like showing nudity and things like that too much. We tend to just blur it out. Yeah, I think it's like it's more of a decision, a creative decision. Usually when we have characters that are naked, it's already planned that it's going to be blurred out, or we'll put a little like black square or something.
Yeah, but in the beginning of the season, there was this shower scene.
Yeah, the showers.
Yeah, where Mariner is taking... She likes it hot. However that sounds, she likes it hot. And there were a lot of naked people, so I guess they're just shapes. Right, and you obscure them with fog and water.
Yeah, we just there wasn't anything under. We just like add like the pixels or whatever, like the blur over top to just hide everything. But
if you want the real thing, I'm pretty sure that thanks to the Rule 34 of the internet, you can find
there is a lot of Lower Decks porn. We are very sure about that. But that's not 16 plus. That's 18, rated R or whatever X.
But for now, I think we should change the subject.
Okay. After 2 seasons, Lower Decks is being praised as one of the best, I think, modern Star Treks right now.
And by praised, we mean our friends who like Star Trek told us so.
Yeah, but, yeah, that's true. And they said Picard is not very cool, but Lower Decks is very, very cool. So you can take credit for that a bit. But the big question is, were you or are you a Trekkie? And you had the opportunity to work on such a big franchise, and were you like, oh yes, I can see the backstage of my favorite brand,
or is it, or maybe it's like a requirement? You have to be a Star Trek fan to work on a Star Trek animation show.
It's not a requirement. I feel it's nice to have a range of like people that know the show and people that don't, because it gives different point of view on the show. Because there's a lot of things that, oh my god, there's a range of fans. Like there's people that know so much about the show. I know a tiny bit. I grew up with TNG, but then I didn't watch the show for like many years because I didn't have cable for many years. And then working on the show, I started right from the beginning of TNG, and then now like I'm at the end of DS9, but I'm trying to like watch pretty much everything I can from Star Trek to just be aware of the lore, and I also enjoy it quite a bit. But like a lot of people ask the question often, like, are you more of a Star Trek guy or a Star Wars guy? And then I started more like, I grew up liking Star Wars better, and then now because of the show I've been working on, and like I've forced myself to watch more of it, I really like Star Trek better now. It grew on me.
I know why, because your paycheck says live long and prosper, right?
It does help. No, it's honestly, I think I like comedy a bit better overall, and then Star Wars doesn't go often there, and then Star Trek, just because it's been a TV show, it's not like movies. There's more content, and there's been episode, depending who writes the episode, that are much funnier. I really like all the Holodecks episode, and like one of my favorite episode is like when Jake and Nug are in the Deep Space Nine station, and they're just trading a lot of things with other people in the station to just try to make like a good deal for money and everything. And then it's just like a nice episode that has also a kind of Lower Deck vibe, and yeah, that's one of my favorite ones.
So when we're talking about episodes and the holodeck episode, I wanted to ask, at the festival you said about the holodeck episode being one of your favorite, and it was like a specific thing that it takes the action takes place in one area, but it's virtual, so you can take it anywhere and, you know, try out different styles. And then in season 2, there's the episode, I think it was episode 9, where we get to see Lower Decks on different ships. And it's also like I don't know what word to use, but I'll say cluster episode, whatever. It's a bit different than the other ones, and I was wondering, is it going to be a tradition? And was this episode 9 a part of, you know, let's show something other than, you know, crazy adventures on different planets?
Yeah, I don't know about too much the intention there. I did hear from fans and like people after watching the episode saying like episode 9 and 10 did feel a lot more like actual like Star Trek episode.
That was something that I was going to say as well, because I didn't watch much Star Trek, I gotta be honest with you, but somehow these 2 episodes felt like the TNG episodes that I watched when I was a child.
Yeah, I think it's like it's something that the writing team is aiming at, and like that's just something that we work, I think, towards, and that just gets achieved over time. I mean, there's been so much of TNG and DS9 and so on that they didn't like end where they started. Like any kind of TV show, you figure the show as you make it in the first couple seasons. And I feel like the more we progress, the better the show gets. So I'm really looking forward to like everybody to see what's coming up for season 3, but I can't talk about that yet.
Maybe we'll squeeze something out of you at the end. But for now, I wanted to ask. So, just to continue on the same subject. So, what was the difference for you working on season 2 as opposed to the first season of Lower Decks?
So the first season is challenging for many things. We do get a lot more notes. There's a lot of work involved. We are trying to like figure out what the characters are going to look like. How do we like set up the rigs for how the characters are gonna move and things like that. And then just the style, like season 1, there was a big process of error and trials and things like that, where we did start trying to make things more graphic and simpler. We wanted the backgrounds to also be simpler, so that when a character grab an object, it doesn't feel like Scooby-Doo, where like it just changed, like there's like texture on the phone, but then as soon as the character...
you can see that this part is going to move.
So... yeah. So we did try to avoid things like that. There's a lot of like, I don't know, the process of like how we plan the show and everything. It's like, it's nice in theory, but then you get to the practice and then you realize there's other like problem that comes from it. So one thing that happened is the first, I would say almost like 6 or 7 episode, the level of details of the backgrounds, of the lighting and everything was too simplistic. And then as soon as we hit episode 7, I think we did push it a bit more for that one. And then because we did that, then Mike was like, oh no, this is what I want. So we needed to actually, I think we did go back to the first episode, and then revised all the episode to match kind of that approach for the lighting and the compositing and
so you already made a remaster of your show before it aired.
yeah, pretty much. So season 1 was challenging on some of those aspects, but it's part of it. Like you just try to figure out the show, you try to get it as good as it can be. So yeah.
Yeah, but then again, the season 2 is sort of like up the ante on the technical aspect as well, because you've got a lot more characters, you got a lot more locations, you got a lot more action than in season 1, I would say,
and some 3D stuff as well.
Yeah, and I think the 3D is also a bit more complicated in the second season. So from a strictly technical standpoint, like the second season would seem to be much harder to animate.
It was more challenging, I would say. The show's getting more and more complex, I would say. We do have a lot of 3D now in the show, and then a lot of different ships and so on. But now the show is pretty much figured out. So at this point, if we do make a ship in 3D, we hopefully will be able to reuse it and things like that. There's a lot more reuse, but even that, it doesn't cover enough. Like when you say crowds or going to different planets or things like that, every time they go to a different planet, we need to design and build the rigs and like populate and animate all those characters. It's a lot of work. So yeah, for sure, I think the team is getting used to the project. It's also, yeah, I think it's like the scope of the project got bigger, definitely. And then everybody on each side of the, like, as much as like the LA team, the Vancouver team, and I'm pretty sure the client also knows that the scope of the project got a lot more complex from season 1 to season 2. Yeah, that complexity, I think, yeah, it's not going down anytime soon.
Yeah, it should, because you have to get better and better, and the competition is getting stronger and stronger.
You have to be like a shark. You have to swim forward or you die.
And then you have to jump the shark, and still be good.
At some point, yeah.
Yeah, still. Okay, but you're working on a franchise that has been established for many, 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 many years, and it's big. It's one of the biggest franchises in pop culture now.
And it's also been established that it has one of the most devout and crazy fan base.
Being a Trekkie is a religion almost, and not just being I like the show. So you had to be a part of the team that had to draw, design, and make the world feel alive. How much iterations of every character, of every ship was there, and how many times you were thinking, "Ooh, that's it." And then you had to do it all over again because someone from the, Star Trek base said, "No, that's not right. It doesn't fit into the world."
In terms of number, I can't give a precise number. I know. So I was involved with like designing working on design for Mariner and Bumbler. There was a lot of people involved in that, but I would say, because we started from what we got at Titmouse with at first the pitch that they got for the project, there was already designs in there. And then when Titmouse got the project, we did try to like make it look as cool as we can and like really push the style of the show. But then Titmouse works on a lot of indie project and like projects that are a bit out there, like that are like different in style than like projects that you would consider like prime time.
Mm-hmm.
So at first we went a bit that route, and then we got back, like at some point the client just had a design, like Mike was super into it. He liked the design we got, and then it didn't look as prime time as like if you look compared to like The Simpsons, Family Guy, or like other shows like that. They all have like little things in comments that you look at them, you don't need to even know it's prime time. Just looking at the design, you would know it's prime time. So that's something we needed to like go back to, where we made the eyes a bit rounder and things like that. And also at that point we were just working on really Bumbler and Mariner. We were trying to just like get the style for them and then expand to the other characters after. But then those characters were like getting a bit further from the pitch package that we got, and then we were asked to like get a bit closer to what we had at the beginning. So I had a pass where I just kind of redrew the characters from the pitch package, but in the way I just draw, and then they ended up being almost what we got in the end. Like I did some rough rotations and things like that, and then in the end I needed to start on directing animation, and I think I was going to start on the Animaniacs at that point. So I did pass the design to Marissa Livingston, who's working in LA. She's the supervising character designer. So Marissa Livingston is like the supervising animation director. Yeah, so Marissa Livingston is the directing. Damn it, I'm saying it wrong.
Yeah, we're keeping that part.
Yeah, we're keeping it.
Yeah. Marissa Livingston is the supervising character designer, and so she took the rough rotation I had, and then she made them into like the final polished version that ended up on the show. And even past that point, we do get the rotations designed from LA and everything, and then that get passed to Travis Wall in Vancouver, who's our build supervisor. And he does, at that point, when we need to do the builds and everything, we do still kind of change a bit the design sometime just to make them efficient for animation. It looks nice like just drawing it, but then when you realize it needs to move, the shape doesn't quite rotate well or things like that. So
this is really fascinating for me how complicated this process can seem from the outside.
It's a cartoonish spaceship. Come on,
Yeah,
how hard can it be?
Yeah.
How long does it take to animate one episode? How long is the process, from getting the script until getting the final 25 or 30 minutes?
Well, from the script to the end, to the episode like fully like rendered and all like polished and everything, it's almost a year, I would say. Like it takes quite a bit of time because there's so many passive revisions and like adjustments and tweaks that happens all the time. But there's every department touched the episode for like a really short amount of time. So let's say if we focus just for animation, to do one episode, let's say all in Vancouver, everything's done at the studio and all of that. It takes about 4 weeks per episode with 60 animators. So yeah, that's a lot of people, and it's about a month, so a lot of time as well. And that's just for like a 22-minute episode.
But you guys work on many episodes simultaneously, right? It's not like you do one.
Yeah, we do have 2 teams. Oh, actually, no, yeah, I'm wrong in my numbers. So we do have 2 teams, and our teams is a total of about like 60 people. It would actually be 2 weeks for 60 people to do an episode. But because we split them, then we have 2 teams of 30 people, and together like we spread the schedule a bit to have a month per episode. So every 2 weeks we do complete an episode in animation.
Okay, so I gotta ask, it's about that, but let's say it's your competition and you're a guy who knows this stuff, so I'm curious, what is your take on South Park? Because before COVID they did a short documentary that showed how do they create an episode, and it was called 6 Days to Air.
Yeah, because they strive to be really current with their episodes.
Everything has to be current, and all the jokes, have to be about stuff that happened during the previous week. So they get a script on Monday, and on Saturday, the 22-minute episode is ready. How is that possible?
Yeah, I've seen that. Well, the idea, they have a structure for it that is really efficient for that show, where first, I think they do all the writing in like 1 day or something like that. And then for the character animation, it can go so much faster. First, because it's all just pieces that they move around and characters are not walking. Walks are taking a lot of time to animate. It's really hard to do nice walks and everything. Or runs or things like that. It's a fairly like complex and really technical like action to do. But then in South Park, they just like move the old character like and wiggle it around from one side to the screen to the other side. And then also just in terms of design, they have puppets now in Maya. Like they do work in Maya, and even though there would be like 3D camera moves, I know like because they switched to Maya at some point, they've been able to like do a bit more camera moves and cool things with like the camera in the show. But yeah, I feel they do have just like a good formula. They go for really cheap animation, which allow them to work a lot faster. And I don't know how much people they have also hired on the show. That's another thing. If they have 100 animators, like I'm sure they can do quite a bit. But considering the quality of the animation, like the quality is good for what they are doing, but because it's so limited that the arms are not redrawn and bent and characters are like mostly just wiggling around, I think that's where they win like so much time. Yeah.
Cool.
Are you satisfied?
Yeah, I'm satisfied. They signed like a gazillion dollar deal a while ago for 70 more seasons and 25 more movies. So I guess that formula works.
Yeah, I remember the time when we used to make fun of The Simpsons because there were 20 seasons of The Simpsons, and now look at South Park. But anyway, I want to go back to the 3D part of the show because I find it really fascinating that the way the 3D animation and the 2D animation in Star Trek Lower Decks sort of blends together.
Yeah.
And then I was wondering, how do you do that? Because it always seems like, to me, it always seems like two separate things. You either go 2D or you go 3D.
And 2D is more timeless.
So how do you approach the animation? Do you start with a 2D or do you start with a 3D part? And how does that work?
We do start with usually the 3D for those scenes, because Titmouse doesn't have a proper 3D pipeline. We do work in association with another studio, and then they do all the 3D for us, but we do all the art direction for all of that. So Nolan is working on that, and Barry a lot. The art director and the supervising director. So they do work with the 3D studio just to get the style that would fit with our characters, to just get it graphic enough that it blends with our backgrounds and all of that. And then for us in animation, usually when we work with the 3D, it's always just in grayscale. It's just gray play blast of the scene. That's all we need. We just need the timing, and then we do track how characters move, FX moves with the 3D.
But is there some tricky way of doing that, or do you have to go frame by frame and
rotate the ship?
Yeah.
We can't, it's already rendered at that point. So we actually, just go frame by frame and just track everything on top of the 3D. So all the 3D scenes do require a tiny bit more work, because most of the show is done on 2s. So for every, let's say, second, we need 12 drawings. But for everything that is a 3D scene, we actually need to do the full 24 drawings usually, so that they move on the same timing. So yeah.
Okay.
It's twice the amount of work every time.
Okay, and about the quality of the renders, I said that 2D is more timeless because 3D tends to age poorly if it's done, quickly or whatever.
Yeah, but even if it's done well and it fits the project at the time, then sometimes when you look at it, after 5-10 years, even though it still fits the
movie, it
or
looks
whatever,
cheap,
it looks dated.
Yeah,
and that's a natural process. Aren't you a bit worried? And is there something you try to do to accommodate for that?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be. It's hard to tell now. I would say, if you look at Futurama when it came out, the ship looked right, and to me, and there's a lot of show I grew up with, and the 3D looked right at the moment, and now you look back and you're like, oh, it's obviously 3D, and it looks 3D compared to the 2D or whatever, or live action. There's always something that stands out. But I feel 3D got so much better in the last couple of years that I don't know when we'll reach at some point. I feel that point where it doesn't age as much over time. It's just the technologies have been changing so much at the very beginning, because 3D was really just a brand new baby born technology. So I feel, just the 3D from a year compared to the 3D of the next year were completely different. As now I feel the progress in terms of 3D hasn't been as different from one year to another anymore. But yeah, I don't know what it means in 10 years from now. And if you look back at just TNG or even DS9, there's stuff in 3D in there that you look at it and it didn't age too much. It's still obviously 3D, but
it fits
it still
the show
works
or
within the context.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And what is your personal preference if you get to watch someone else's animation? Do you tend to? Is it even a matter of choice? Ooh, I'd like that to be 2D, so I'm going to watch the whole feature of a 2D animation, or 3D, or stop motion maybe.
I watch a bit of everything. I'm not I don't want to limit myself to necessarily a medium or a style or anything like that. And I feel you gain from anything, watching live action, for even Star Trek Lower Decks. For the board team, we do refer a lot to the live action Star Trek shows. We do look at what has been done in the past that was done really well in terms of staging the characters and things like that. And we do try to repeat that and use that at the best we can, so that the show also has the same vibe in terms of camera placement and things like that. So I think as an animator or director and all of that, it's you try to also look as much as other animation, but other live action and stop motion or whatever it is, if it's done well, it's done well, and it can like be transposed. Like there's elements of it that can be transposed to other like media.
You mentioned looking at live action predecessors to Lower Decks to look for inspiration. Does it also apply to the characters? Because on the show there are quite a few of the guest stars and the characters returning from the live action version. We got Riker, we got Q, we got Tom Paris, we got the Borg Queen, and how different is it to work on these characters as opposed to the ones you have to invent yourself?
Are there guidelines? Is there a guy in Hollywood saying, "Oh, she can't blink like that because that's not with in
or maybe the original actor himself has a final say on it. It's not the way I want to be portrayed.
I'm not sure how much like the actor would have a say on necessarily like how they are animated or anything like that, but I feel most of them, they're just really excited about working on the project and like being involved in another like Star Trek project in a different style. But yeah, it's always tricky because there's also budget wise, it's like it costs a lot more to get guest actors. But then because it's all I don't know how Hollywood works, but like I guess there's like probably like actors union and things like that, so there's a rate that comes with it. But yeah, we do try, well, as much as like if you look even in the characters, a lot of the aliens we have in the backgrounds, a lot of them are aliens we did refer to from like other live action shows where we just, for example, we have like Morn, not necessarily Morn himself, but we do have his race of character a bit all over the place. And then there's a lot of aliens like that we took even from the animated series or the live action series. We do create also new races and things like that for like aliens. I feel the process is a bit more loose because we don't have a reference to start from. But then usually our first version is really shooting in the dark, where like we do something and then we show it to Mike and we show it to like the client and everybody that's involved, and then sometimes the answer is going to be like, oh yeah, that looks great, let's move forward with that. And sometimes the answer is just like, oh no, this is not working, let's do something different, or like let's just change his ears, or let's just change something about it. But it depends. Usually we would also get kind of a description sometime in the script of the character, depending like if it's a character that needs to go in the water, do they have like gills or things like that. So there's always a bit of information that we start from in design, but not always. Sometimes we really start from nothing, and we do try to make sure that they kind of fit in the world, that they don't look too different. But if you just look at the Star Trek animated show, they went pretty wild with the design characters for like the aliens. So I think we've got quite a big range of, we can go really like wacky with the design and it would still kind of work in that context. But whenever we take things from live action, we do try to match the patterns or whatever like style they had for their outfits, or the level of details to some degree of their face and things like that. We always simplify because we need for animation.
I have to ask about the process in terms, maybe the guest stars, but pretty much all the actors involved in the show. Do they record their lines, the dialogue, before or after seeing the animation, or is it like in between? You give them a rough render so they know how much time do they have, or is it their lines dictate how long does a scene take place?
So for animation, you always want to try to lock the the storyboard before animation starts. Otherwise you lose a lot of money and time trying to do extra work that in the end gets cut or something. But then when it comes to line, it's really nice when we can have all the final dialogues, all of that before we do the animation. It's not always the case, in the sense that sometimes we do watch the episode once it's animated and everything, and then we realize, oh, something like a gag isn't quite working, or there's just like either the energy level or like the timing is kind of off, or like there's something that's not quite working for some scenes. So sometimes we do re-record some lines, but we do try to avoid that. We do try to have the audio before we do the animation, which has been one of the most challenging part of working during COVID, because it's really hard to get hold of actors and like put them in a recording studio and things like that. Some of them had a recording studio at home, which made things a bit easier. But it's been quite challenging to get the final audio before we do the animation. So sometimes we did work in animation on like temporary audio with just someone. It's not the actor, it's just someone else that did record the line. And then we do animate to that and hope that the timing will be close enough. And usually actors with experience they would just like be really good at kind of following the timing of the lip flap of the characters and just the overall like body acting or whatever. They would make their voice work with it. So I would say it hasn't been a huge issue in the show. It's been going pretty smoothly, but at the same time, I'm not super involved with voice recording and all of that. We have people dedicated to that. So
it's a big
okay
thing.
But let's talk some secrecy. So as an animation director, are you like privy to knowing the whole script up front, or are you limited to only parts of it because of a super secrets that has to be kept, and like you do in Disney that you only get...
we know that Polish voiceovers are being recorded. Just the actor that plays like say Ray, she sees only the part of the screen where Ray is being shown, and everything else is covered in black.
Yeah.
So how's that with animation in Star Trek?
Yeah, it's not that intense for Star Trek, at least for Lower Decks. So we do see, I do see all the scripts, and then even for our animators, I do like to have all the scripts just because sometimes a character would talk really fast or say really weird words because there's like alien words or like words that are more from like the lore of Star Trek. So it's important to have the script so that they can look at what kind of lip sync they need to do. As also, we have people in the team that English is not necessarily their first language. So being able to like just read what the words are definitely help us in the process of doing lip sync. But also in terms of knowing, for me, it's like I try to usually read the scripts and like be involved as early on as I can, so I can help with maybe some decision that would impact animation. Anything that sounds really challenging and complex to animate, then sometimes I try to let the team know, and then in the way it's boarded or in the way we animate it, we do try to have an approach that is really efficient. We won't shoot ourselves in the foot like trying to do something that has like water everywhere, or like if there's like a technical challenge, just try to approach things in the smartest way. And if I can read the script early, I can just try to tackle those challenge early on.
Okay, and if you find something that you say, okay, this reads really well in a script, but from the animation standpoint, it doesn't, maybe make sense, or definitely is way too complicated to do it in a timeline that we have, is it possible for them to change the script at that point?
We rarely change the script. Like, we try to stay really close to the script. I think that would come up a discussion between probably the supervising director and Mike, with Barry and Mike. That's really not like, that's way before it gets to me, and like that's above my pay grade, so I wouldn't get like into that. But when it comes to, let's say, sometimes the way something is boarded, sometimes I can just maybe check with Barry if we can just adjust one thing that would make it a bit nicer for animation, a bit easier for animation.
Okay, but the really important stuff is that if you wanted to right now, you could spoil the season 3 for us, and if you wanted to lose your job, of course.
But are there scripts for season 3? Did you get to read any of them?
Yeah, we're started on season 3. I don't know. I honestly don't know when it's going to be out, and I can't really talk.
It says 2022, so we guess in a year or so. But delays are a thing, so maybe later.
Yeah, it's like it's also tricky because we are still kind of in COVID. Like, everybody's working from home. There's nobody at the studio pretty much, so it makes also making any kind of show more challenging. It's always making also recruiting more challenging. Like, if you need to hire people, but they are kind of all over the place, and like they can't really apply. Well, they can apply at the studio, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a whole new world in terms of recruiting, because it's also all the studios have no physical limitations. So all the studios have been really aggressive because they've been expanding beyond their physical limit. So in terms of like who's out there that's left to like animate on the show, there's usually like not that many people available.
Do you have the script on your computer? Come on.
So yeah, I do have like a lot of information. I have the scripts and I have like a whole lot of stuff for
Okay,
season 3,
but
I
would
won't.
assume there isn't a single thing that you could tell us about season 3.
Except that it's coming.
No, I can't. Yeah, it's coming at some point. We are working really hard at it, and I'm sure it's gonna look awesome. But yeah, I can't tell anything beyond that.
There is one more question that we have to ask, and we ask all guests that particular question. And Hubert has to do the honors because
I always do I don't know why I always ask this question.
It happens so that he always asks that question.
Yeah, so the final question on every podcast that we do and with every guest that we do is, who is your favorite superhero and why?
Oh, my favorite superhero. I really like Hellboy. I really like. Well, first, he's not human. I kind of like just the demon look of the character and the style of how it's drawn and so on. But beyond that, he's also like not giving a shit. He's just put in all those situations where he's just like he doesn't care about ghosts or whatever, and he's just so chill about it. I just like his attitude overall. Yeah, I do really like Hellboy a lot.
What did you think about the movies?
The movies, they're all right. I feel like that's the thing too, where like Hellboy has such a nice lore and visual and all of that in the books that I feel everybody's kind of like make their own vision of what they would want to see for Hellboy as like a movie. And to me, I did enjoy them, but it still didn't made it for me where I feel like I still want to see
something else. You have your own vision of Hellboy.
Yeah, I'd like to see another Hellboy that like it's a bit closer to what I have in my mind for it. But at the same time, it's like I'm not the filmmaker. I'm not a live action person, so I can't do it myself.
That's why you can always go back to comics.
I'd like them to do it in animation, like doing a 2D version of like Hellboy, the same style as they have for the comic. That'd be sick. That'd be really cool.
I would assume that is something you would like to work on as well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so fingers crossed. Alex, thank you very much for your time. We had a great pleasure talking to you again. Hopefully we'll get to do that sometime in the future, maybe after season 3 of Lower Decks, or maybe after you get to direct your own Hellboy animation feature.
Yeah, but I don't think we'll do it before because we don't want to stop you from doing the season 3. We want to watch we want to watch season 3. So
yeah, you're too busy to, we can't take up too much of your time. But thank you very much. Have a great day and hopefully talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. It was really fun talking with you this morning. Take care, guys.
Koniec.